Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, Kat's Gardening, Kitchen, and More. I wanted to come to you because as gardening season is well underway, I wanted to go over a few things about canning so that you guys can get prepared so that when you're ready to can, you have what you need. So first of all, when you're canning, I started out freezing, and I had this book right here. This is the Ball Blue Book of Preserving, and I taught myself how to freeze from this. There's a section back here on freezing, and I taught myself how to do that. Then when I started canning, I used this book, but then I also purchased another book, the Ball Blue Book Guide to Preserving. It doesn't matter which one you do because I do one every few years, and they're all great. I also started making my own canning book where I would put my favorite recipes, my herbs, my spices, my blends, my canning stuff, so that I had them handy so I'm not flipping through the book going, where is it, what page? It's all right here. So that's the first thing that you need. The second thing that you need, like me, I started out freezing, is freezer containers. And they come in different sizes, as you can see here, depending on how much you're making and what you're freezing. Some come with a screw lid, like this one. Some come with a snap lid, like this one. I prefer the screw lid just because I think it keeps it from getting the frost all over the food as much. And then we have the smaller one here. You can put your jars in the freezer, but you have to be super, super careful with them that they don't clang against each other and shatter. My freezers get so full that I worry about that, so that's why I use these. But it's a personal choice. You want to make sure you have good measuring cups, good measuring spoons, a funnel, some strainers, a scraper or a spoon. You want to have a good cutting board and good knives. Now, depending on what you're doing, will depend on which size knife you'll need. I find when I'm canning or freezing or dehydrating, I always need my paring knife. When I'm doing chopping and stuff, the other size knives work. And depending on how much you're doing will depend on the size of cutting board you need. Another tool that I find is handy, but you don't have to have because you can use your cutting board, but it saves a lot of time, is my little chopper here. I've got different size grates that can go in here for what I'm wanting. You cut your vegetables, stick it on it, snap this down, and it falls inside here. That's an optional choice. So now we're going to go over, that was freezing, now we're going to go over our canning. The second thing I taught myself to do besides freezing was water bath canning. I've got this canner here. I know they make stainless steel ones too. This is a granite ware. This is what I'm familiar with because my mom used it. My mother-in-law uses it. It comes with a rack like this that sits down inside to hold your jars up off of the bottom of the canner. And when you're all done canning and processing, you lift this up, set it right here, and let the jars cool for a few minutes. My pressure canner was the next thing I taught myself how to do. It also has a rack inside here. This is the one that came with the pressure canner. I was gifted this by my aunt. You can also use this kind of a rack too. Same thing within your water bath canner as well. Some pressure canners come with a dial gauge, like you see on mine, and some come with this little tool here, which will rock back and forth. Mine comes with both. This is a weighted gauge, is what they call this. It took me years to get into pressure canning because I was a little nervous about it. But now that I've done it, I'm like, why was I so nervous? Nothing to be nervous about. So, let's talk jars and containers. You want to make sure, well, actually before we do that, we'll go over the spices and stuff. You want to make sure you have the proper spices for the things you're doing. A lot of things require vinegar, whether it be apple cider or white vinegar. Let me sit down here for a second. If you're pickling, you might want some of your salt for pickling. Mustard seeds, good old regular salt if you don't buy the salt this way, but it cannot have iodine in it. Citric acid is very important in a lot of dishes, especially if you're water bath canning. You might want a fruit pectin if you're doing jams and jellies. It's another way of fruit pectin. But your spices will vary depending on what you're doing. Just make sure that you have a good selection and that it's handy. Okay. Now, talking jars. Jars can sometimes get overwhelming. It can also sometimes get fun. And why do I say that? Because there's so many different sizes and cute styles. Here, we have our quart jars. Quart jars come both in wide mouth and regular mouth. I like my wide mouth for things like pears and peaches and anything I'm going to have to reach down into in packing or pulling out. I like my regular mouth jars for things that I can just pour, whether it be sauces, soups, juices. Then, same thing with your pint jars. You have both a wide mouth and a regular mouth. And then here's where we get into the cute jelly type jars and things. These are what I use to do my jams and jellies and my mustards and my ketchups. Sometimes I will do my jams and my ketchups and mustards in this if I don't have enough of these. But I like these because they're smaller and I don't have to worry about hurrying and using it up quickly in the fridge. And then these are just some cute designed jars. I use this a lot of times if I'm giving gifts to friends, or if I'm fermenting, I'll take this jar because it's small and I'll stick it on top inside to hold the stuff down in, and that works great. This one is just a fun wide mouth jar. I have taken things to work in it. I've taken applesauce in it for my lunch and different things. So it's a cute, fun jar. So now that you got your jars out of the way, we want to talk lids. There are a lot of lid companies out there, especially since the pandemic started, and people have been taking advantage. The ones that I really like is Ball, Kerr, Purr, and Golden Harvest. Those are the ones that I like. You can buy them like this, where it comes with, I'll show you, the lid and the band. If you save your bands and take good care of them and keep them from rusting, which I'll talk to you about in just a second, you don't have to buy a box like this very often. You do not want a band that is rusted because it will not hold and seal the jar proper. You can also buy, if you have plenty of bands already, you can buy just the lid itself. They come in both wide mouth for your wide mouth jars and regular for your regular jars. Now I know it has been really difficult lately to find lids, and so when I find them, I snatch them up. I know Ace Hardware is a good place to go to. Sometimes you can find them at your grocery stores. I don't depend on Walmart because they're always out of everything. That frustrates the heck out of me. I have these Tupperware containers that was gifted to me by my mother that she used for years and years and years and years. And I'm like, well, they're not dishwasher safe. What am I going to use them for other than storage? So I've got my lids in here. And I inspect them every canning season to make sure that they are good lids. And if they're not, I don't just throw them away. I recycle them. You know, I'm a firm believer that if we're struggling with metal here in the United States and struggling with being able to produce the things we need for canning, then why not recycle and help out? So that's what I do. And there's my wide mouth. I tie them together so that when I'm canning, I just pull out the one section and I don't have to bring the whole thing out. To each their own on what you choose to do. Some people hang theirs. Either way is fine. There's no right or wrong way, it basically is what it comes down to. I also use my other Tupperware container to store my freezer containers in. Another thing that you will need is a jar lifter like this. Something that will safely lift your jar up out of the water because believe me, they get hot. And you might come across some tools that you might need, like I use this. This is an apple slicer / corer, which helps me when I'm doing like my applesauces and apple butter. There again, that's optional and you can use a knife. Let's talk storage lids. You can use your regular lids and bands like this to store your opened products. Not storing anything that you just can't because you have to take the rings off. But once you have opened it and you haven't used the full jar and you want to stick it into the refrigerator, you can use your ring and stick it in the refrigerator like that. I don't like to do that unless I absolutely have to, because the cold and the moisture of the refrigerator can sometimes make these rust faster. What I've been doing, and you can do one of two things, is if you can see here on my mustard and on my lard, you can buy lids in the canning section. Ball makes them both in wide mouth and in regular mouth that are leak proof. And just screw on. Another thing I've been known to do is save my mayonnaise jar lids because they fit on here perfectly. And anytime I empty out a mayonnaise jar, I save the lid. Another thing I do is the Parmesan cheese lids. I save them, wash them. You could use those. They are awesome, especially on your spices like this. If I want to shake it out, if I just want to pour, they fit very, very well on there. And that's another good option. So there's so many different things you can do. I mean, so many different tools out there, but these are the basics. I mean, you can go buy a steam juicer. You can go into a lot of different things, but they're all optional. This is the basics on getting started. I hope that this was helpful for you. I will be bringing canning videos to you throughout the season. So do hit the subscribe button below and the bell notification so you're notified of any upcoming videos. And comment if you have any comments or things that you like to use. Mark below and tell us what it is you like to use when you're canning. I like to have a towel handy, not just for cleanup, but for setting on the table or counter to put my jars on, because you never want to put a hot jar straight onto a counter, especially because you don't know the temperature of the counter and you can cause it to shatter. So you want to put a towel in between the two. So I hope this was all helpful. Bye, my friends.